They didn't even look me in the eye when they threw my things out. A chair, a photo album, my toolbox, all tossed onto the sidewalk like trash. And my nephew, the same boy I raised like a son after my brother died, just stood there, arms crossed, acting like I was a squatter in my own home. I was 70 years old, no wife, no children. That house was all I had left, and now, not even that. I remember sitting on the curb as the sun set behind me. My knees ached, my pride was shattered, and I couldn't stop thinking, is this how it ends? After everything? My name is Enrique. Most people just call me Rick. I spent 48 years laying bricks and pouring concrete under the Brazilian sun, built schools, hospitals, churches, even the very house I just got kicked out of. My hands are rough, fingers bent from decades of work. I never made much money, but I always had enough for beans, bread, and bus fare. And when my brother died young, I took in his boy, Davy, like he was my own. He was barely 6 then. Now he was 30, with expensive shoes and a cold stare that didn't match the little boy I once held when he had nightmares. It started subtle. Davy moved into the guest room after losing his job. I didn't ask questions. That's what family does. We help each other. But weeks turned into months. Then he started locking the doors I had never locked. He brought in his own furniture, repainted the living room without asking, and spoke to me like I was a tenant in his home. I told myself it was temporary. I didn't want conflict. Maybe he was going through something. Then one day, he brought me a stack of papers, said it was just some property formalities to make things easier in case something ever happened. I didn't understand much of it. The legal terms made my head hurt, but he smiled and said, "Uncle Rick, this is just to protect you. I'd never let anything happen to this house." I signed. 3 weeks later, I came back from the market and the locks were changed. He opened the door, eyes cold, and handed me a letter from a lawyer. "Due to recent ownership transfer, you are no longer legally allowed to occupy the property." It even had my signature, the same one I gave him. I looked at him in disbelief. He didn't flinch. He just said, "It's better this way, Tio. You need to be in a home. You're not well." And then he walked back inside and closed the door. Wonderful. Let's move into the next emotional phase of the story. That night, I slept on a park bench half a block from the house I built with my own hands. I kept thinking I'd wake up and realize it was a dream, some cruel mix-up that Davy would clear up in the morning. But the cold was too real. It crawled into my bones. My knees stiffened, my back burned from the wooden slats, and the old blanket I had stuffed in my grocery bag barely covered my legs. No one called. No one came looking for me. I didn't even have a phone anymore. Davy had borrowed it last week to update some apps and never gave it back. Funny how quickly life can vanish. One moment you're sitting at your kitchen table drinking black coffee. The next, you're praying that the rain skips your corner of the bench. For 3 weeks, I wandered the city. I didn't beg. I couldn't. Something in me wouldn't allow it. But I watched. I watched people avoid my eyes. I saw mothers pull their children closer as I passed. I overheard 2 teenagers laugh when one of them said, "Hey, that old guy looks like he escaped from a nursing home." Every day, I disappeared a little more. Not just from the street, from memory, from the world. But then, something happened. I was sitting outside a bakery, my stomach twisting from the smell of fresh bread I couldn't afford, when I heard a soft voice behind me. "Seu Henrique, is that you?" I turned around slowly. A woman in her 40s stood there with her hand over her mouth, eyes wide with disbelief. She looked familiar. And then I saw her smile. "Meu Deus, you used to fix our pipes on Rua Maranhão. I was 12 and you came over when the roof leaked." Her name was Carla. I didn't recognize her at first. The last time I'd seen her, she had braces and a runny nose. Now she was grown, confident, and beautiful, and looking at me with tears in her eyes. She didn't ask questions. She didn't pity me. She simply said, "You helped us when no one else would. Now it's my turn." And just like that, I had a roof over my head again. Her apartment was small but clean, and she gave me the guest room without hesitation. The first night, I cried quietly into the pillow, not because I was sad, but because for the first time in weeks, I felt human again. Carla cooked rice and lentils the way her mother used to. She even washed my clothes, but most importantly, she listened. She asked me to tell her what happened. I did. And when I finished, she didn't say, "You should have known better." She said, "He took your house, but he can't take your dignity." It was Carla who handed me my first screwdriver in months. A neighbor needed a broken gate fixed. The next day, it was a loose faucet, then a cracked tile, then a door that wouldn't close. Soon, word spread. There's an old man in Carla's building who works like a young man and charges like it's still 1980. It was a Thursday afternoon when I met him. I was fixing the handle of a screen door in apartment 3B when the man who lived there offered me a glass of iced tea. His name was Mr. Langston, retired. Tall, soft-spoken, always wore a vest like it was Sunday morning. He watched me work for a while, then said, "You've got steady hands. Most young folks can't hammer a nail straight anymore." I chuckled. "These hands have built a few thousand walls in their time." He paused, tilted his head. "You don't talk like someone who lives around here." I hesitated for a second. Then I told him. Not the whole thing, just the outline. The house, my nephew, the papers I didn't understand. He didn't blink, just nodded slowly and said, "Bring me whatever you still have. Anything he gave you, any mail, copies, scribbles. If he used a lawyer, I want to see the letterhead." I didn't ask why. Something in his voice told me I could trust him. That night, I dug through the envelope Claire had saved for me. She had rescued it from my old toolbox the day she took me in. Said something told her it was important. Inside were 2 folded documents and a business card with Davy's name scribbled on the back. The next morning I placed everything in Mr. Langston's hands. He spent almost an hour going through it. No words, just quiet hums and short breaths. When he finally looked up, his eyes had changed. They weren't gentle anymore. They were sharp, focused. "Your nephew's an idiot," he said calmly. "A cruel one, but still an idiot." I didn't know what that meant. He pointed to one line on the second page. "This transfer, legally meaningless. He never had the full deed. The house wasn't solely yours. It was still partially under your father's trust, which legally means your signature didn't authorize what he thinks it did. And this clause here," he tapped again, "forgery, amateur, but forgery nonetheless." My throat tightened. "What does that mean?" He smiled, just a little. "It means he doesn't own anything." I sat back in the chair like the wind had knocked the air out of me. "I can help," he said, "not because I owe you anything, but because I hate watching snakes pretend they're sons." He spent the next 3 weeks making phone calls, filing forms, requesting records from dusty archives I didn't even know existed. And while he did that, I kept fixing pipes and fences. I kept showing up, earning my meals. Slowly pulling my name out of the gutter Davy had dragged it through. One afternoon I came home to find Mr. Langston sitting at Claire's kitchen table. He had a thick folder in front of him and that same small smile on his face. "It's done," he said. "The house is yours again, legally, irrefutably, and I filed for damages under elder exploitation laws. You may not want to press it, but if you do, he's in serious trouble." I didn't say anything, not right away. I just leaned back in the chair, looked out the window, and let it sink in. After everything, I wasn't the one who'd been thrown away. He was. Claire drove me there. It had been nearly 2 months since the day I lost everything, and now, somehow, we were circling the block where my house still stood, only it didn't feel like mine anymore. The lawn was overgrown, the porch light was out, the paint on the front door, the same door I'd stained with my own hands, had started to chip, and Davy was sitting on the front steps. He looked smaller than I remembered, not physically, but spiritually, like life had taken something from him too. When he saw me step out of the car, he froze. I walked slowly, not to intimidate him, but because my knees still ached from those nights on concrete. He stood up fast, like he expected a punch, but I just looked at him, not angry, not bitter, just clear. "I got the house back," I said quietly. He didn't speak, didn't blink, just stood there, swallowing air. I handed him the letter, the court ruling, the proof. "I could take you to court. I could file charges. I could make sure you never touch another inheritance for the rest of your life." He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I stepped past him and sat down on the steps, the same ones where I once tied his shoelaces when he was 5, the same ones where I sat with a cup of coffee every Sunday morning. He stood there for a long moment, then sat beside me. No one spoke for almost a full minute. Then I heard him whisper, "I thought you wouldn't fight back." I nodded. "I didn't, not the way you expected." He looked at the ground. "I was desperate. I lost my job. I had nothing." I turned to him. "So did I." He closed his eyes. There was no speech, no dramatic apology, just a man finally realizing what he had done, and a man beside him who had already let it go. "I'm not pressing charges," I said, "not because you don't deserve them, but because I won't let your ugliness become my burden." He didn't thank me, and I didn't need him to. I stood up and walked inside, my house again, not because a judge said so, but because I knew who I was now. I knew what this house stood for. Over the next few weeks, I didn't just move back in. I rebuilt it, not the walls or the floorboards, but its soul. I invited Claire and her daughter over for dinner. I fixed the fence for the neighbor next door who'd stopped talking to me when Davy moved in. I planted tomatoes again in the same soil where my wife once kept roses. And one by one, the ghosts that lived in the corners of the house began to disappear. But I didn't stop there. One morning, while sweeping the porch, I saw an old man across the street, walking slowly, clutching his jacket like it was armor. He looked just like I had, forgotten. I crossed the street. "Need help with anything?" I asked. He turned, surprised. "I don't have money." "Good," I said. "I'm not charging." That's how it started. A cracked window, a broken heater, a grocery bag too heavy for one arm. I didn't open a business. I opened a door. It's been almost a year now. The house is warm again. The lights work. The tomatoes are growing. I still don't talk to Davy often, but I hear he's doing better. He got a job. He's renting a small apartment 2 towns over. Maybe losing what he stole was exactly what he needed to remember what was real. As for me, I'm 71 now, and every day I fix something. A step, a socket, a silence. Because after everything I lost, I found something no one can ever take from me again: my purpose. Sometimes the people closest to you will betray you for things they didn't even earn. Sometimes the world will watch it happen and do nothing. But if you live long enough and quietly enough, life will hand you the moment where everything returns. Not with noise, not with vengeance, but with quiet dignity. That's how I won. Have you ever felt forgotten, or like someone stole what you built? Share your story in the comments. I'll be there, reading every word.